Sideboard guides. How do they work? Hey there, everyone. Welcome to episode 39 of the Rebelcast. Got quite the set of topics lined up for you today. I'm Athena the Bun, and I'm here with my co-host, Max Damage. Max, how have you been this week?
Well, when it comes to Magic, I'm gonna be honest with you. It's been pretty rough because my pet deck, Mono Green, it did like really well one night streaming. I hit the number 3 player in Mythic and I beat him, and it was awesome. And then the very next stream, I went 0-5 with it. So I tried to make Mono Green a thing is not working for me. So I went back to Boros Convoke, played some Mono Black. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm still in Standard when everybody's kind of moved on to Pioneer. But how have you been?
I've been all right. I've kind of moved on to Explorer and Historic for now. I'm kind of like burnt out of Standard. I tried playing like Boros mid-range and like skewing it like super heavy against control with like 4 weddings, 4 Urabrask Torch. And then I queued up first game thinking as long as we don't hit Boros Convoke, we're fine. And then the first game I play is against Max on stream for Boros Convoke. Like I took one look at my opening hand and I was like, all right, we're going to game 2. Got it.
We had somebody in my chat that was also watching you on the Discord. I can't remember who that was, but they were in my chat just letting me know like, oh, y'all magically linked up on Arena, and I'm like, dude, this happens at least once a week.
Oh, that's like the 3rd time it's happened. Yeah.
Oh man. But hey, today we have a special guest. Y'all know who it is. Returning to the Rebelcast after a long hiatus, Darth Riktus. Riktus, how's Magic treating you this week?
I mean, Azorius controls on a 15-1 run up to Mythic, so pretty well, actually. And as much as I know everybody's sick of Azorius control. I know everybody's sick of Standard. I'm here for it, though. I came from the age of Drow New Mirrors. I'm just here for it.
Hell yeah. I know. You're that veteran when it comes to playing any kind of archetype, while control is like the one that I shy away from quite a bit because I just make too many piloting errors. I just need to suck it up though in practice. That's really what it comes down to.
I mean, it's a ton of fun once you get into it. And honestly, I think my favorite part is where you sit there and you play a land and you pass and the opponent pauses and you're like, come on. You know you want to do it. And the moment they do it, you're like, gotcha. Love it.
I'm sure you do.
You're a psychopath for enjoying the control mirror. That's all I'm gonna say on that.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
Today we've got a couple things to talk about. So there's been some frustration lately with current MTG competitive focused content as a whole. And then we've got an article discussing what went wrong with Magic the Gathering to bring us where we are today. Then we'll finish off with our usual Rebel Informer section where we'll respond to your past questions and comments. Without further ado, let's get right into it.
So, it's no secret now. It's been a few weeks. We've been releasing quite a few from different members of the Rebellion team. The Rebellion's been hard at work, pumping out sideboard guides. And when you hear sideboard guide, you typically hear there's a paywall or, somebody takes payment. But our video sideboard guides are free. You just check them out on our YouTube channel. And we're trying to build the ones that we test with. And, we have standards when it comes to these. Definitely, Riktus is here to attest to this. Riktus, what are some of the standards in terms of how much you have to play a deck, understand a deck, tune a deck to really be able to make a sideboard guide with this?
I mean, when you get down to it, I think pieces of it have to do with how long you've been playing the game, right? So veterans, pros, people who've been around for 10 plus years, they can probably do it off the back of like 3 different matches against any particular archetype. They'll know how to sideboard. But if it's been a while, if you haven't done this in a while, or if you're just new to the game, you want to get about 10 matches in against one archetype, just 1v1. And I'm not talking ladder play. I'm saying one other dedicated individual who you trust to pilot competently is sitting on the other end and is going to go back and forth, and you're going to talk the whole time and figure it out. And it's easier in paper because you get to rewind if you make a mistake and go, okay, let's pretend that didn't happen. Let's play this out the way it would if we didn't make errors. On Arena, a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a high bar, but we set that bar for a reason. We only want to put out the content that actually helps viewers to learn a little bit more about the archetype. But I'm going to quit with the self-promotion for a minute. That's the bar that we set. Athena, what's going on in general with competitive content on YouTube? Otherwise, what?
So I've just been really disappointed by sideboard guides that I've seen. It's like I'm a fairly newer player. I started in 2020, about 4 years ago. And like I try to find out why people sideboard the way they do with certain decks. I think it was like Seth Manfield made like a blue-white control deck sideboard guide, but it just had the cards in and out, and it didn't have any logic to it. So when he says like bring all your Tidebinders against Esper, I to this day still don't understand why, because it doesn't. When I play it, it feels terrible against Esper. And without the logic, there's like kind of a disconnect there. And then you'll find like two guides that have like completely contradicting information. But again, because there's no logic written out on the sideboarding, you can't find out like where one player is coming from versus where another player is coming from. So,
Yeah. I mean, really quickly, to be fair, I think there's a huge saturation going on, right? Within arena content, magic content. There's a lot of people trying their hand at doing this. Some a lot more successful than others. We're coming at it from a team perspective, a team dynamic. We check each other on these kinds of things. So I'm used to posting a deck list in the Discord and then getting like 5 or 6 comments that are like, why this, why that, why this, why that? This would work better. I love that.
Part of the reason we do these sideboard guides and the way we do them was based on what we saw as a need, what we saw as a vacuum. And that has been the case for a long time. Once upon a time, you used to get tournament reports, and those were regular. And those were kind of like little sideboard guides by the end of it, because they'd go through and they'd tell you, okay, round 1, I played against, Boros Convoke. And this is the way I sideboarded, and this is why. So even if you didn't get like it as a technical sideboard guide, you got sort of a sideboard guide out of it. And you could piece it together between different tournament reports. These days, a lot of people, I think, don't necessarily put that time in or put that work in. And it's not the way it used to be. Basically, once Star City fired all of their writers, that was kind of the end of it.
Yeah, you can kind of tell about the quality of the writing and the write-ups now compared to like 10, 15 years ago. Totally different scene. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's like one of the big things with it is like I don't think there's actually such thing as like a perfectly built sideboard or a perfect sideboard plan against stacks. That's like one thing I think I'm starting to learn is like you'll see it's why we see like these archetypes that have like very few flex slots in the main, and then like the sideboards are like wildly different from one another in the same meta. So I don't know, I'm just starting to kind of learn that like maybe like sideboard guides aren't the best form of or the best way to do it all the time, at least not the way that it's being presented currently with a lot of these articles that are putting them out.
Yeah, and you have the social media effect, you have the content creator effect, where you want to hype up the thumbnail as much as possible, you want to hype up the headline, the title of the article as much as possible. And so you tend to be hyperbolic in terms of talking about what it can achieve, what you can achieve with it. And, maybe we need tournament write-ups to come back. What's your take?
So I look at it and I think we have this issue because people want the kind of like the get rich quick of Magic schemes, like what's winning right now, what's clickbaity, what's going to get there. And they don't want the nuance. They want the sideboard guide, but they don't necessarily want the logic as much. And the better players tend to want the logic more than they care about the numbers coming in and out, because those numbers are going to shift based on composition. And no two decks tend to be alike. It's rare that you get to a meta position where you're like, this is the 75, it's locked in, it's not changing for a month. No, it's going to change week to week. So it's the logic that really matters. And the cards that are coming in and out only matter insofar as you need to be able to understand what the position points are for the deck. That's it.
Yeah, so needless to say, I'm pretty excited about the fact that we're putting these out. I know we're not putting out as many as people have requested, right? We'll get like 3 or 4 requests per video for ones that, we actually are brewing and trying to come up with, but we set the bar pretty high for a reason, I think, because we want to aim towards people who want to be more competitive, who aren't just trying to do it quick, right? It takes a little bit of effort. I don't know. Athena, what's been your experience since joining the Rebellion and being a part of it? I mean, you're in there all the time. You're in the trenches all the time talking about decks, archetypes, why people do what. So tell me, what's your assessment about just the group overall and your experience with it?
I mean, the group is great. Like, there's plenty of like you get all types of players, right? You get the players that are just kind of here for the community. You get the players that are like super competitive grinders that are like on MTGO constantly playing challenges and leagues. And you kind of have like everything in between. So everyone can kind of learn things from each other, like in the community. And it's kind of neat to see all the open discussion that can be had about these different things.
Yeah, it's been very cool. And if you're listening to this and you haven't checked out our Discord, haven't checked out our channel, definitely check out the channel. But the Discord's really become a tight knit community. You can post something in there and you'll get responses right away. Like we really test each other when it comes to figuring out the logic behind our card choices and deck design choices. So I really enjoy it. But I put an article in that Discord this past week, and it garnered some strong reactions. And I think I just want to say, like, the article, we'll post a link in the description, but it essentially tries to craft this narrative around the founding of Magic and Richard Garfield. And first it sets the tone, right? What kind of person was he to design a game like this? And then it builds a narrative on what went wrong. And I'm not going to steal anybody's thunder. I had some strong reactions, so maybe we need to hear from somebody else first. What what did you guys take away from reading that article? What were some of the highlights that hit you?
I'll let Riktus go ahead with this one.
Yeah, special guest.
Fair enough. I mean, my biggest takeaway is, first of all, they're trying to build Garfield up into kind of like this mythical being in a way. Like, here's this man that came up with this amazing concept, and he has all of these amazing concepts, and Hasbro hasn't honored that concept. Honestly, based on the way that I've understood Richard Garfield to be across all of the time that we've, heard various pieces of information, he builds games to understand concepts. And in many ways, it's kind of like watching somebody try to figure out macroeconomics within game structure. And so I think that is really what he is about, is trying to figure out different models of interaction and just enjoying tinkering with that. Like, that's what he likes to do. He's clearly more introverted, and that makes sense to me. That said, we also built the Rebellion with that kind of a mindset. Like, how do we solve the competitive community crisis? That was really the main goal. When Max and I started talking over a year ago, it was, we don't have this community that we used to have pre-COVID, especially like 10 plus years ago when Hasbro and Wizards, they were just putting all the support into the game. We don't have it anymore. So, we built a Discord, we built trials, we built content. There's more coming on the way. But that was my takeaway from this article, is that much like Garfield, what we're trying to accomplish is to build a concept into a reality.
Very much so. And I can relate to just the idea of building your games around trying to understand concepts. I can, from a very young age, I tinkered with my toys. I used to create tabletop RPGs out of my little soldiers. The way that the article talked about him going around and just crafting games out, like salt packets on a diner table, I thought that was cool. I thought that was something I didn't know about him. And I thought that started to sort of build up his personality and talk about just what kind of man designs this game? What kind of person does it take? And I thought that answered that question for me. So I'll give the article credit for that. Definitely. And then, of course, the D&D background. That's baked into the game, and D&D is not necessarily a competitive game. There's a sense of like community and working together, and that sort of lore was built into the game. So it's right. I feel like it's the article was trying to build this narrative around that by making that a big point. It was saying like there's this competitive element that Garfield talked about, but there's this casual element also that's in Magic. And I don't know if the article addressed it any more than to say that, but that was one of my takeaways from the early parts.
Yeah, I mean, I look at the way they structured this article, and it's more on the anti-capitalist sentiment, which I agree with in this. They wanted it to be like this game, from what Garfield talked about, was that he dislikes that the ownership of the commodity is more important than the gameplay. And I echo it. I do. And I think we've seen that with especially in Commander, with the proxy discussion. Like, do we have the ability to afford these $5,000 decks, or should we be allowed to just enjoy Magic for being Magic? And that's one of the things that led me to push out a physical paper and into Arena, was it was a quarter of the cost. Like, I don't want to be spending thousands upon thousands of dollars on this game every year. I want to play the game. I want to spend time with friends. That's the point of it, is the community. And I think that that is part of what Hasbro has really screwed us on. They've commodified the hell out of this game. And instead of being able to sit and enjoy time with the community, everybody's focused on, do you have this version of this card? Did you get this secret layer? Did you miss out on the, it's like constant FOMO, and it's exhausting. It's just exhausting.
It is. Garfield even said, like, I don't want this to be a game or a hobby that's just for the rich.
And part of the problem is, if you make it a game for the rich, you are gatekeeping competitive play too. You are saying that if you want to be a competitive player, you better have close to a trust fund, because you're going to have to pay for traveling. You're going to have to pay for all your cards. It adds up. It adds up quickly. And, you know, once upon a time we were young and we could take all that lawn mowing money and our first job, and we'd take it. And I literally would take my paycheck and sign it over to the store, because I'm 15. I don't have rent. I don't give a shit. I just want more cards. You know what I mean? But now, you know, you're older, you have responsibilities, and you can't just do that. So you're like, how much of this is actually disposable income? And that becomes a problem if you want to play competitively. And it didn't used to be as much, because we got much more in the way of support. And pros have echoed this for years, that we used to have this amazing support system, and it's gone. It's just gone, and it's not coming back from what they've told us.
I was gonna say, I don't think I would have ever gotten into paper Magic first. Arena is definitely, just from the cost alone, like the reason I started getting into this game more. I mean, I've built a paper deck at this point, and like it took like multiple paychecks, like putting away some money each paycheck just to get into, and that's like a standard deck. So like, forget it if you're trying to get into like Pioneer or Modern, right?
Yeah.
So like, I've just been like relying on like members of the community to like borrow cards from for Pioneer RCQ season, because like I just can't do it. Plus, like, I don't know, maybe I'm just the weird one, but like I think Arena is more enjoyable than playing in paper personally. I know I'm kind of like the odd one out in that one, but I don't know, I kind of just like how clean everything looks on Arena. Everything's like kind of set in the way that it's supposed to work, and it kind of like, not like it doesn't like hold your hand as much as it's like, I have a really hard time playing in paper. Just because I have really bad ADHD, and it's really hard to track certain things, and Arena just makes that a whole lot more accessible.
There's also the fact that we're a very neurospicy community, right? There's a lot of people that are on the spectrum. There's a lot of people with ADHD, and the ability to have Arena playing in a quiet room versus a loud tournament hall makes a huge difference in your ability to compete. I used to have massive anxiety when I would play in my early tournaments, because I'm sitting there and I'm being, I'd get to like the finals, and all of a sudden there's 30 people watching the table, and I'm just like, holy crap, I do not want all this attention. I want to focus, but it's almost impossible with all that focus on you as a kid. So I get what you mean. Arena, to a degree, allows for even more pure competitive play, because you remove all these external elements. And I know there are people that watch competitive sports and they're like, well, people on the football field sure can. Well, that's football players. You know what I mean? We're playing a card game. We're not there to line up in front of a stadium. We're there to play with our friends.
Yeah. I want to bring up three more points to kind of ground us before we hit the Arena discussion full on. First, the idea that luck is a great equalizer in the game, and that is part of the core design philosophy. I agree with the article there. Opening packs is luck. Making the right plays, drawing the right card, all that is luck, and that should never be taken away from the game. The other side to that is this discussion that's been ongoing in the community about how commons used to be a lot more valuable in terms of what they brought to a deck, whereas now some of your essentials in standard, for example, are rares, mythic rares, and that didn't used to always be the case. So there's been an uptick in price just from that alone. And then the second point, just the design. The fact that the game is built around competitive play. I think Garfield acknowledges that. You can't get rid of the competitive scene and expect the game to survive long term. That's just a core truth that a lot of people have forgotten, unfortunately, in the community. But I think that's one of our core tenets here at the Rebellion. So that scene is necessary for the game to survive. And then third, the Magic Pro Tour 96, right? Like, Garfield took explicitly from tennis, and by way of other adjacent sports, basketball, soccer, but just the design of how it worked. He wanted there to be stars that rose to the top that continued to frequent the scene. He wanted to also prove that anyone could make their way to the top, right? You could start at the low LGS level, compete in regionals, make your way through. And then finally, just the fact that there's always been spectacle around Magic. That's actually kind of seen as a negative now that all we have is spectacle now. These big events, these big conventions. We don't have the focus on the small LGS community until very recently when Wizards has tried to push that with Standard especially. But this idea that you always had to have like the Worlds event. You wanted that spectacle to bring attention to the game so that younger players could feel like they could make it too, have something to aspire to. So you had rankings. Just the way he designed that Pro Tour 96 and subsequent years. Darth Riktus, you can talk a little bit more about GPs, for example, but just the design, it was meant to build a competitive scene. So I just want to emphasize that before we go into the discussion. But if anybody else wanted to say anything before I talk about those 3 paragraphs.
I mean, I agree with you. I think Garfield struggled a little bit with understanding how the competitive side was supposed to be put together, and his ideals on the competitive side were not quite as far along, I guess, as mine are, because he wanted there to be competition, but for him it was more about a friendly competition.
Yeah,
and we've transcended pieces of that. And to be honest, I kind of miss the days where we had Worlds and it was based on geographic location, and we had Team USA going up against like Team Germany, and we had Finkel versus Buddha. And that was, I mean, you tuned in for this stuff if you were around back then. And these competitions were gorgeous because you would have narratives, and that has been the issue. And I think Kibler actually pointed out with a Twitter post where he went through the most recent Pro Tour, and his match that was televised, even though he was doing terribly at the Pro Tour, garnered more views than everything else combined at that Pro Tour. And that's because people know who Kibler is. They find a compelling narrative. If you watch the WNBA, for instance, it's Caitlin Clark. That's the reason everything's moving forward right now, because there's a compelling narrative. And that's what's missing in a way from what I see lately. There just aren't there aren't compelling narratives on most of these players, and they aren't pushed when they're covered.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to have the stars at the top kind of pushing the narrative, creating something to watch, right? It's not just about competitive, but the competitive scene creates these narratives just by itself. But yeah, I find that extremely like cohesive. It's really what holds the game together, in my opinion. But Athena, do you want to say anything else?
Yeah, Pro Tour just needs a trash talk section. That's how you hype it up. Like, no, I'm serious. Like, so like the League of Legends Championship Series used to do trash talk before every single game, and it hyped up the game, and people would either flame you if you trash talked and lost, or hype you up if you trash talked and then won. So I think it's actually like a good idea for them to have things like trash talk. Obviously it's like friendly banter. No one's being like super serious about it, but it's just something to hype up the game and make fans more invested.
And by that same token, I come from the fighting game community as well, and that's all that is. Like rap battles, you just go at it, and once it's done, you leave it out there, and that's it. Nobody becomes enemies or anything like that, but you build a narrative from trash talking your opponents and becoming famous for winning a lot. Like that's just the fighting game community spirit. And I often wish that we could bring that into the full Magic community, but it's just different scenes, I think. But I think there's definitely something to that, to what you just said. Look, this article, I'm going to read some from the 3 paragraphs that I kind of take issue with. It talks about all of that, and it builds up to talking about, the article's author goes to their first LGS in Canada, and they go back to it after not being there for years and see that scene's kind of dying off, that they're not selling as much product, right? And this is a problem the community 100% acknowledges. We all disagree about why, but that the LGSs just aren't getting the same deal that they used to. Maybe they're mismanaged, whatever, but Wizards has the control button on that. So I don't know that blaming the LGSs, the rare few people that do, is really the way to go. But in any case, whatever your opinion on that is, the article takes a spin right into blaming digital Magic for the downfall of Magic in general and LGSs specifically. So I'll put it up on the screen. And of course, there's a link to the article in the description. But after talking about secret layers and how that's one reason, right, that the LGSs aren't doing well, Wizards are trying to sell cards directly to collectors. The collectors market is coming back. And this one LGS owner talks about how they're really trying to cut them out. And then the quote goes, They don't owe me anything, but you could just consciously feel that they were trying to cut you out. They wanted people to stop playing in stores, to tank standard, and for people to play on arena. The author further talks about this. Arena is Magic's online platform, a janky piece of software that I haven't been able to close a single time without opening my task manager and force quitting. To use Arena is to encounter an infernal procession of undersized text, slot machine-like animations, and in-game purchases that highlight all of Magic's worst qualities. Arena feels an awful lot like what Garfield calls Skinnerware, a relatively recent phenomenon in game design where publishers, usually of electronic online freemium games, abuse and essentially treat users like animals in a test chamber. But the real problem with Arena is that it just doesn't feel like real Magic, because Magic is a game made for face-to-face play with another person. And before I turn to you for reactions, I just want to highlight that earlier we just talked, Darth Riktus brought up how there are people who can't do the giant spectacle, right? Whether they're neurodivergent or for other reasons. And so I just kind of, I don't want to bring up the A word ableist, but it just came off a little bit ableist right there at the very end. But in any case, what are your takes on this?
Who gets to determine like what Magic is supposed to be, right? Like that's the biggest takeaway I've had from this whole thing is who gets to determine that? It's the people playing it. So if one person enjoys playing Arena, you know, keeping to themselves, playing best of one ladder every day, and that's their way they enjoy Magic, what's wrong with that? And what's wrong with Wizards helping to cater to that?
My issue so far is that the way that a lot of people have structured this is they talk about Magic, they don't talk about the Gathering. And the Gathering can happen on a digital platform. I think the issue is that Wizards has been negligent in promoting its own product, and they have tried to take they've tried to cut corners for profit. For instance, there was a point when I was young, I would say, oh God, 20 years ago at this point, right? And they were worried about the fact that pros weren't playing FNMs. FNMs were starting to die. And this was when it was strictly paper. So they said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to shift from the ELO system, which was an old chess system that basically said if you were going to play at FNM, you were risking your ability to auto-qualify for the Pro Tour, because if you lost to a scrub, it could cost you like 50 points in your ELO ranking. So they're like, we're done with that. We're not doing that anymore. We want people to come in. We want them to talk to each other. So then they did FNM foils, and those FNM foils were worth a lot of money, and they were amazing, like cryptic commands, factor fictions, damnations, textless foils. And you got some of them just for playing often. Like you didn't have to win events. You just had to go play every weekend. And all of a sudden in the mail, you would just get these textless foils. Like what they put in Secret Layers, they used to just send those to you at the end of the month saying, hey, thanks for playing. Thanks for being a part of the community. It was amazing. So I think they're shooting themselves in the foot. They could have communication. They could have a, excellent communication on Arena. They give us emotes. That's it. You know what I mean? We've all had to use like 2 other platforms to run tournaments. You have to use a different platform for a digital tournament. Then you have to use a Discord to talk to people. Like there's 3 things that have to be open just to interact with somebody on Arena. Mm-hmm. And that's bad design by Wizards. That's not on the community. People, I think, would love to play digital Magic and have it be at least something like this, where like all 3 of us able to sit and talk and have discourse. We could be playing a game of Magic right now in Arena. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think that's an issue. I also think if you want to bring back paper play, you make sure that every pack you crack has a QR code that scans it into Arena. You make it really simple. You don't have to choose to split your finances back and forth. Just if you want to play paper, you get it on Arena too. There's no reason you should have to buy the cards twice.
Yeah, Pokemon did it. I mean, and it to great success. People play both in that community. Yeah. I think those are all really great points, and they just highlight that there are these adjacent issues that are just by choice, not by accident, but by choice that Hasbro makes to sort of gatekeep things behind paywalls, to sort of, try to nickel and dime you, especially if you're a collector, if you get excited about the design of specific versions of cards. You no longer go to Saturday or Friday Night Magic. You no longer compete on Saturday to get those. You buy them on Secret Lair. I think that has an impact.
It does. You're losing something that is hard to quantify because it's goodwill of the community, right? It's an intangible. You sell a company, that is actually something they try to quantify when they come up with that sale price. Like, what is your goodwill in the community? What is your PR? what is it worth? And they used to have amazing goodwill and PR in the community. And all I see on Twitter and everywhere else are people going, remember the good old days when they gave a shit about us? Like, and I don't think they understand that they are destroying long-term profitability for themselves by pushing these quarterly profits. And it's why I'd love to see a day where Hasbro has to sell Wizards. It just has to give it back to the people. And I know at one point Finkel made a run to try to make that happen. I would love to see it happen because I think if it's owned privately and not publicly, and a private company understands that not every quarter is another 10% profit margin, like you're not bumping up every quarter, you're going to have bad ones. That's life. That's how it's supposed to be. It's unsustainable otherwise. But you do that, you grow the game. And if you grow the game, you're going to make more profits in the long run.
Yeah, and I believe digital is a big part of that, especially now. Like, we're only going to get more digital with our games as time goes on. So I don't understand the boomer drive to kind of like pretend digital doesn't exist or call it not real Magic. It's really strange to me because it really brought Magic back to my life. Otherwise, I wouldn't really be playing because it was like $1,000 for a couple of decks and then you're done. If those decks are bad, oh well.
Hasbro to me is indicative of like a microcosm of what we are seeing happening at scale in the US with most of these companies, this greedflation that we see in grocery stores. If you go buy groceries right now, it is so much more expensive and people can blame whatever they'd like. But at the end of the day, a lot of these large corporations are valuing short-term profits over their relationship in a community, over the goodwill of the people. And we've watched it backfire for a couple of them. We've seen Kellogg's lose several $1 billion this year as they can't move their cereal because of people coming together as a community and saying, we're done with this crap. And I hope it continues. I hope we keep saying that as consumers. The problem with Hasbro is that they make a product that is so damn addictive and it is so hard to get away from that cardboard crack.
Yeah. Oh, man. Not to get on a tangent, but did y'all see where Kellogg's last PR push was to come out with these commercials that said, hey, in these hard times, you should eat cereal for dinner?
Oh my God, that was this close to let them eat cake. And I was, God, I hope they all fail because of it.
You guys remember the old like the Cocoa Krispies and Fruit Loops like cereal straws that they used to do? Apparently they brought them back.
Oh,
really?
Wow.
Yeah. Apparently they brought them back. So that's that. I think that kind of speaks volumes for the state of that company right now.
Yeah, once I saw those cereal boxes going on like a 2-for-1 special, I just smiled and walked past them. I was like, yeah, you get what you fucking deserve,
100%. I'm glad y'all are on the same page with me. I'm glad that the Rebellion holds as a part of our philosophy, just like the community and the competitive scene. And rather than making everything, casual is a part of this, but rather than making everything casual or pushing towards more friendly, non-competitive games, we want to empower people to become competitive and like realize that competitive is fun. That's not a dichotomy, but that you can have fun when you win games of Magic. I don't know why some people don't understand that, but I think that's part of what we do, why we put out what we do in terms of our competitive content. And how we respond to this is basically to say, hey, like, Arena has enabled us to do all this. Like, and it's good. It can enable other players, especially new players, to get brought into the game that way. So I don't know why this author struck out and hit Arena and called it the main problem, but there are certainly adjacent issues that are by choice that are really things we should discuss before trying to cancel Arena. I don't know what the person wants. But look, we're running out of time. We can't do our final segment. We'll do more Rebel Informer next time. So leave us your comments. Leave us your questions down there if you're on YouTube especially. Or come by the Discord and talk to us directly. Links in the description.
All right. This episode of the Rebelcast is sponsor free. So if you'd like to contribute to what we do and make sure we stay in the game as long as possible, consider making a purchase in our merch store or joining the Rebellion.
Oh, yeah. And thank you to the community for supporting our various shows, our sideboard guides, our Stay of the Metas, these Rebelcast episodes. And don't forget to check them out because the return of the sideboard guides, it's so exciting to see that finally come back. We that was some of our early content, and then we got away from it because we needed to focus on the Stay of the Meta, and certain portions of the Rebellion garnered more of our attention. But we're back. And we're going to be putting these out with various creators from the Rebellion. So I'm excited. Athena's even done one. I hope you come back for one.
I will.
Hell yeah. But thank you to the community. And check out our next video, which we'll have a State of the Meta premiering Wednesday at noon. Come check that out. But until then, untap,
Untap,
upkeep,
upkeep, resist.
resist.